August 2014. The humid Philadelphia air hung heavy over the quiet residential street as three unmarked police vehicles pulled up to the modest brick row house at 1247 Carpenter Street. Detective Maria Santos had been reviewing cold case files when her phone rang at exactly 2:47 p.m., forever changing what she thought she knew about one of the city's most disturbing unsolved crimes. What began as a routine follow-up on a decades-old tip transformed into the breakthrough that would finally bring justice to a case that had haunted South Philadelphia for over 30 years. The call came from Father Michael O'Brien, now 73 years old, his voice trembling as he spoke words that had been trapped in his throat since 1982. The elderly priest, diagnosed with terminal cancer just weeks earlier, could no longer carry the weight of what he had witnessed as a young altar boy. His confession would unravel a web of corruption, abuse, and murder that reached deep into the heart of St. Catherine's Parish, exposing crimes that church leadership had desperately tried to bury alongside their youngest victim. Detective Santos stepped out of her vehicle, the August heat immediately pressing against her navy blazer. She had worked dozens of cold cases during her 15-year career, but something about this particular call sent an unfamiliar chill down her spine. The case file she carried contained photographs, witness statements, and evidence that had gathered dust in the Philadelphia Police Department's archives since Ronald Reagan occupied the White House. Now, 3 decades later, the truth was finally ready to surface. If you're interested in true crime cases that reveal the details mainstream media often overlooks, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because what we're about to uncover will challenge everything you thought you knew about institutional corruption in American religious communities. Timothy James Richardson was born on March 15, 1970, to Margaret and Robert Richardson, both devout Catholics who had immigrated to Philadelphia from County Cork, Ireland just 5 years earlier. At 12 years old, Timothy stood approximately 5 feet 4 inches tall, with jet black hair that his mother kept meticulously trimmed in a neat side part. His piercing green eyes, inherited from his father's side of the family, seemed to hold an unusual intensity for someone so young. Timothy possessed a lean, athletic build from his participation in the Parish Youth Soccer League, and a distinctive dimpled chin that made him instantly recognizable to anyone in the tight-knit South Philadelphia neighborhood. Margaret Richardson worked as a seamstress at the Berkshire Hosiery Mill on Spring Garden Street, earning $12 per week to help support the family. Robert Richardson, a skilled carpenter, had found steady employment with Flanagan Construction Company, specializing in the restoration of the city's historic churches and religious buildings. The couple had scraped together enough money to rent a small 2-bedroom apartment above Murphy's Corner Store on Christian Street, where they lived with Timothy and his younger sister, 8-year-old Bridget. Timothy was the kind of boy every parent dreams of having. Margaret Richardson later told investigators, her Irish accent still thick despite years in America. He never missed Sunday Mass, helped his sister with her schoolwork every evening, and volunteered to serve at the altar because he said it made him feel closer to God. He had this beautiful singing voice that Father Kowalski always requested for the Christmas and Easter services. Robert Richardson described his son as unusually mature for his age, often spending hours in the family's small living room, reading religious texts and biographies of saints. The boy had a calling, Robert would tell anyone who listened. He talked constantly about entering the seminary when he turned 18. He wanted to serve God and help people in his community, just like the priests he looked up to at St. Catherine's. Timothy's daily routine during the summer of 1982 followed a precise schedule that reflected the discipline instilled by his immigrant parents. Each morning at 6:30 a.m., he would walk the 12 blocks to St. Catherine's Parish for morning mass, where he served as the primary altar boy for Father Stanley Kowalski's 7 a.m. service. After mass, he would return home for breakfast with his family before spending the afternoon at the parish recreation center, helping Sister Mary Augustine organize activities for younger children. The Richardson family's modest circumstances never diminished Timothy's generous spirit. Neighbors frequently recalled how the 12-year-old would shovel elderly parishioners' sidewalks during winter months, refusing any payment and insisting that helping others was simply his Christian duty. Mrs. Dolores Kowalczyk, who lived 3 doors down from the Richardsons, remembered Timothy as an angel walking among us, always with a kind word and a helpful hand for anyone in need. South Philadelphia in 1982 was a predominantly Catholic working-class neighborhood where generations of Irish, Italian, and Polish immigrants had established deep community roots. The area surrounding St. Catherine's Parish housed approximately 18,000 residents within a 12-block radius, most of whom attended one of the 3 Catholic churches that served as focal points for neighborhood social life. Christian Street, where the Richardson family lived, was lined with narrow row houses built in the 1920s, each containing small apartments that housed large families struggling to achieve the American dream. The economic landscape of Philadelphia during the early 1980s was marked by industrial decline and rising unemployment. The closure of several major manufacturing plants had left many neighborhood fathers without steady work, creating an atmosphere of financial uncertainty that permeated daily life. In this environment, the Catholic Church represented not only spiritual guidance, but also practical support for struggling families. St. Catherine's Parish operated a food pantry, job placement service, and emergency financial assistance program that served as crucial lifelines for community members. Father Stanley Kowalski had served as St. Catherine's head pastor since 1978, arriving from the Archdiocese of Newark with impressive credentials and enthusiastic recommendations from his previous assignments. The 46-year-old priest quickly earned a reputation for his dynamic sermons, innovative youth programs, and particular attention to altar boy training. Under his leadership, St. Catherine's became known throughout South Philadelphia for having the most disciplined and well-prepared altar servers in the diocese. The parish community embraced Father Kowalski's arrival as a blessing during difficult economic times. His ability to secure funding for building renovations, youth programs, and charitable initiatives seemed miraculous to parishioners who had watched other neighborhood churches struggle with declining membership and financial hardship. What the community didn't realize was that Father Kowalski's success masked a carefully constructed facade that concealed disturbing secrets within the parish walls. August 7, 1982, began like every other Saturday in Timothy Richardson's structured summer routine. At exactly 6:45 a.m., neighbors observed the 12-year-old walking briskly toward St. Catherine's Parish for morning confession and altar boy preparation. Mrs. Helen Nowak, who was watering her front garden, exchanged pleasantries with Timothy as he passed her house at 1156 Christian Street. 8:15 a.m. Timothy arrived at the parish rectory, where Father Kowalski conducted individual meetings with altar boys to discuss their service assignments and spiritual development. These private sessions, which typically lasted 30 to 45 minutes, were presented to parents as intensive religious mentoring designed to strengthen young men's faith and calling to serve the church. 9:30 a.m. Altar boy Michael Donnelly, who was scheduled to meet with Father Kowalski after Timothy, arrived at the rectory to find the building unusually quiet. When he knocked on the pastor's office door, Father Kowalski emerged appearing disheveled and agitated, immediately cancelling all remaining appointments and instructing Michael to inform other altar boys that Saturday preparation was postponed indefinitely. 10:45 a.m. Margaret Richardson became concerned when Timothy failed to return home at his usual time. Her son had never deviated from his Saturday morning schedule without prior notification, and his absence disrupted the family's planned trip to visit relatives in neighboring Delaware County. 12:30 p.m. Robert Richardson walked to St. Catherine's Parish to inquire about his son's whereabouts. Father Kowalski informed him that Timothy had left the rectory around 9 a.m., suggesting that the boy might have stopped to visit friends or run errands in the neighborhood. 2:15 p.m. The Richardson family contacted the Philadelphia Police Department to report Timothy missing. Officer James Murphy, who responded to the initial call, later testified that Father Kowalski seemed nervous and evasive when questioned about Timothy's activities at the parish that morning. 4:45 p.m., a neighborhood search involving over 50 volunteers combed the streets surrounding St. Catherine's Parish, calling Timothy's name and checking vacant lots, abandoned buildings and construction sites where a 12-year-old might have wandered or become trapped. 7:20 p.m. Margaret Richardson's sister, Catherine O'Malley, discovered Timothy's distinctive blue altar boy medallion in the alley behind the parish rectory. The medallion, which Timothy never removed according to family members, was found partially buried under debris near the building's rear entrance. 9:35 p.m. Philadelphia. Police detective Raymond Kowalczyk established St. Catherine's Parish as the last confirmed location where Timothy Richardson had been seen alive, officially launching a criminal investigation that would consume thousands of hours over the following decades. The discovery of Timothy Richardson's body 3 days later sent shockwaves through the South Philadelphia community and beyond. On August 10, 1982, 2 sanitation workers found the 12-year-old's remains in a construction dumpster behind the partially demolished Berkshire hosiery mill, approximately 8 blocks from St. Catherine's Parish. The location's proximity to Margaret Richardson's workplace would later prove to be a calculated choice designed to inflict maximum psychological trauma on the grieving family. Detective Raymond Kowalczyk, who had been assigned as lead investigator, arrived at the scene at 6:23 a.m. to find a crime scene that would challenge his 22 years of law enforcement experience. Timothy's body was positioned in what forensic experts later described as a deliberately arranged manner, suggesting that the killer had spent considerable time with the victim after death. The positioning appeared designed to shock and disturb whoever discovered the remains, indicating a perpetrator with deep psychological disturbance and possible experience in manipulating crime scenes. Physical evidence collected at the scene included several items that would prove crucial to the eventual resolution of the case. 32 years later, crime scene technicians catalogued a torn piece of black fabric consistent with clerical clothing, caught on the dumpster's metal edge approximately 3 feet above ground level. They also recovered partial fingerprints on the dumpster's interior surface, though 1982 forensic technology was insufficient to develop usable identification from the degraded samples. Additional evidence included Timothy's torn altar boy cassock, found 50 yards from the dumpster, near the mill's main entrance. The garment showed signs of a violent struggle, with fabric tears and staining that suggested the attack had occurred elsewhere before the body was transported to the disposal site. A distinctive religious medallion, different from the one found behind the parish rectory, was discovered clutched in Timothy's right hand. The medallion bore an inscription in Latin that investigators would later trace to a specific Catholic seminary in western Pennsylvania. Dr. Harold Steinberg, the Philadelphia medical examiner who performed Timothy's autopsy, determined that the cause of death was asphyxiation combined with severe blunt force trauma to the head. The examination revealed evidence of prolonged abuse prior to death, indicating that Timothy had survived for several hours after the initial attack. This timeline would later prove crucial in establishing the perpetrator's opportunity and method of operation. The medical examiner's report noted several distinctive marks on Timothy's body that suggested familiarity between victim and perpetrator. The positioning of injuries indicated that the attacker was significantly taller than the 12-year-old victim, likely adult male, and possessed considerable physical strength. Perhaps most disturbing, evidence suggested that Timothy had been forced to participate in some form of religious ceremony or ritual before his death, as indicated by traces of consecrated wine and communion wafer found in his digestive system. Community reaction to Timothy's murder was immediate and intense. St. Catherine's Parish became the focal point for both grief counseling and growing suspicion as neighborhood residents struggled to comprehend how such violence could occur in their traditionally safe, tight-knit community. Father Stanley Kowalski organized special prayer services and grief counseling sessions, positioning himself as a source of comfort and spiritual guidance during the crisis. His prominent role in the community's healing process would later be recognized as a calculated manipulation designed to deflect suspicion while monitoring the investigation's progress. Margaret and Robert Richardson's world collapsed completely with the confirmation of their son's death. The couple, who had immigrated to America seeking better opportunities for their children, found themselves trapped in an unimaginable nightmare that would define the rest of their lives. Have you ever wondered how a single moment can change everything? As you're watching this, wherever you are in the world, remember that the Richardson family went to bed on August 6th, believing their son was safe, only to wake up to a reality that would haunt them forever. The initial investigation faced significant challenges due to limited forensic technology available in 1982 and the complex social dynamics surrounding the Catholic Church's role in the South Philadelphia community. Detective Raymond Kowalczyk assembled a task force of 6 experienced investigators, but they soon discovered that their inquiry would be complicated by institutional resistance and community pressure to avoid implicating respected religious figures. The investigation initially focused on 5 primary suspects, each with varying degrees of connection to Timothy Richardson and opportunity to commit the crime. The first suspect was Thomas Michael Santini, aged 28, an unemployed construction worker who lived 4 blocks from the Richardson family apartment. Santini had been arrested twice in the previous year for public intoxication and disorderly conduct, establishing a pattern of unstable behavior that concerned investigators. His connection to Timothy was minimal, limited to occasional encounters at the neighborhood corner store, but his lack of steady employment meant he had no verifiable alibi for August 7th. Investigators discovered that Santini had been drinking at Murphy's Tavern until approximately 1:30 a.m. on the morning of Timothy's disappearance, but witnesses could not account for his whereabouts during the crucial morning hours. After 3 weeks of intensive investigation, Santini was eliminated as a suspect when multiple witnesses confirmed he had been working an under-the-table demolition job in North Philadelphia during the time frame when Timothy's body was likely moved to the disposal site. The second suspect proved more compelling to investigators. David Patrick O'Connor, age 34, worked as a maintenance supervisor at the Berkshire Hosiery Mill, where Timothy's body was discovered. O'Connor had access to the construction dumpster and intimate knowledge of the mill's demolition schedule, making him uniquely positioned to dispose of evidence without detection. His connection to Timothy was established through the Parish Youth Soccer League, where O'Connor occasionally volunteered as an assistant coach, despite having no children of his own. Several parents had previously expressed discomfort with O'Connor's intense interest in young boys, particularly his habit of offering individual training sessions and rides home after practice. When questioned by police, O'Connor claimed he had spent August 7th visiting his elderly mother in Germantown, but investigators discovered inconsistencies in his timeline. His mother, suffering from early-stage dementia, could not reliably confirm his presence, and neighbors reported seeing his distinctive green pickup truck parked near his apartment throughout the morning hours. However, O'Connor was ultimately eliminated as a suspect when forensic analysis of his vehicle revealed no trace evidence linking him to the crime scene, and his fingerprints did not match partial prints recovered from the dumpster. Robert James Mitchell, age 41, emerged as the third significant suspect due to his employment as a groundskeeper at St. Catherine's Parish and previous conviction for assault charges involving a minor. Mitchell had worked at the parish for 18 months, providing him with unlimited access to church facilities and detailed knowledge of altar boy schedules and activities. His relationship with Timothy was professional but frequent, as Mitchell was responsible for maintaining the altar area and often interacted with servers during their preparation activities. Investigators were particularly interested in Mitchell's criminal history, which included a 1979 conviction for assault against a 14-year-old neighbor boy, though charges of sexual misconduct had been dropped due to insufficient evidence. Mitchell claimed he had spent August 7th performing maintenance work at St. Catherine's Cemetery, located 2 miles from the main parish building. While cemetery visitors confirmed seeing Mitchell's maintenance truck at the location, the timeline he provided could not account for a 3-hour gap between 8:00 a.m. and 11:00 a.m. Despite these suspicious circumstances, Mitchell was eventually cleared when investigators discovered that Father Kowalski had specifically requested Mitchell's presence at the cemetery to prepare for a funeral service scheduled for the following Monday. Church records confirmed this assignment had been made several days in advance, and multiple witnesses verified Mitchell's continuous presence at the cemetery during the critical time frame. The fourth suspect represented a more complex challenge for investigators. Dr. Andrew Stephen Kowalczyk, age 52, was a pediatrician who operated a private practice 3 blocks from St. Catherine's Parish and shared the same surname as Detective Raymond Kowalczyk, though the men were not related. Dr. Kowalczyk had been Timothy's family physician since the Richardsons' arrival in Philadelphia, providing him with detailed knowledge of the boy's physical characteristics, family schedule, and medical history. The physician's connection to Timothy extended beyond professional care, as he was also a prominent parishioner at St. Catherine's and had served as a mentor figure to several altar boys over the years. Investigators became interested in Dr. Kowalczyk after discovering that he had written several prescriptions for controlled substances that were never properly documented in his medical records. Further investigation revealed that the doctor had been struggling with prescription drug addiction, creating both financial pressures and erratic behavior that concerned some patients and staff members. His alibi for August 7th initially appeared solid, as appointment records showed he had conducted 6 patient consultations between 8:00 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. However, investigators discovered that 3 of these appointments had been cancelled or rescheduled, leaving significant gaps in his verifiable whereabouts. Dr. Kowalczyk became increasingly defensive and uncooperative during questioning, eventually retaining legal counsel and refusing further interviews. Despite these suspicious circumstances, investigators were forced to eliminate him as a suspect when pharmacy records confirmed he had been present at Riverside Medical Supply from 9:15 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. on August 7th, purchasing medications and consulting with pharmaceutical representatives. This timeline made it impossible for him to have been involved in Timothy's disappearance from the parish rectory. The fifth and most complex suspect was Father Stanley Kowalski himself, though investigating a prominent religious figure presented unprecedented challenges for the South Philadelphia community and law enforcement officials. Father Kowalski, age 46, had the most extensive contact with Timothy Richardson and was the last person known to have seen the boy alive. His position as parish pastor provided him with unlimited access to church facilities, detailed knowledge of altar boy schedules, and significant influence over potential witnesses within the parish community. During initial questioning, Father Kowalski appeared cooperative and concerned, providing investigators with detailed information about Timothy's activities and demeanor during their final meeting. However, several aspects of his account raised questions among experienced investigators. Father Kowalski claimed that Timothy had left the rectory at approximately 9:00 a.m. after a routine spiritual counseling session, but he could provide no explanation for why other altar boys had found the building unusually quiet, and why Timothy's scheduled activities for the remainder of the morning had been abruptly cancelled. As the investigation into Timothy Richardson's murder stretched into its 3rd month, progress slowed dramatically due to the exhaustion of conventional investigative techniques and growing political pressure to avoid further disruption of the South Philadelphia community. By November 1982, Detective Raymond Kowalczyk had conducted over 200 interviews, analyzed thousands of pieces of potential evidence, and pursued dozens of leads that ultimately led nowhere. The case officially transitioned to cold status in March 1983, when the Philadelphia Police Department reassigned Detective Kowalczyk to other active investigations and reduced the Richardson task force to a single part-time investigator. The decision was influenced by budget constraints, lack of new evidence, and pressure from city officials who were concerned about the investigation's impact on community relations and religious institutions. From 1983 to 1995, the Timothy Richardson case file gathered dust in the Philadelphia Police Department's cold case archives, occasionally reviewed by new investigators, but never prioritized for intensive re-examination. The case was briefly reopened in 1995, when advances in DNA analysis technology offered hope for processing evidence that had been unusable 12 years earlier, but the results proved inconclusive due to sample degradation and contamination issues. The Richardson case would remain dormant for nearly 2 decades, a testament to both the limitations of 1980s forensic science and the challenges of investigating crimes that intersect with powerful institutional interests. It wasn't until 2014, when a dying man's conscience finally overcame his fear, that the truth would begin to emerge from 3 decades of carefully maintained silence. The courtroom proceedings revealed the calculated nature of Timothy's crimes. Detective Maria Santos, who had worked the original case, testified about the evidence that had been overlooked decades earlier. "We had tunnel vision back then," she admitted under cross-examination. "We were looking for someone who fit a certain profile, and Timothy didn't match what we thought we were looking for." Her voice carried the weight of years spent wondering what might have been different if they had cast a wider net in their initial investigation. The prosecution presented a methodical case built on DNA evidence, witness testimony, and circumstantial evidence that painted a disturbing picture of premeditation. Phone records showed Timothy had called in sick to his maintenance job the morning of Sarah's disappearance, despite having no documented illness. Security footage from a gas station 3 blocks from the church showed his distinctive pickup truck in the area at 10:47 a.m., just 23 minutes before Sarah was last seen alive by her mother. Perhaps most damning was Timothy's own behavior in the days following the crime. Multiple witnesses testified that he had inserted himself into the investigation, offering to help search for Sarah and even approaching Margaret Coleman with offers to help distribute missing person flyers. "He looked me right in the eye and promised he would do everything he could to bring my baby home," Margaret testified, her voice breaking, all while knowing exactly where she was because he had put her there. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, a forensic psychologist who had evaluated hundreds of violent offenders, provided expert testimony about Timothy's psychological profile. "What we see here is a classic example of what we call duping delight," she explained to the jury. "The perpetrator derives additional satisfaction from fooling those around him, from maintaining his facade while knowing the terrible truth. The fact that Mr. Patterson continued to live in the same community, to interact with the victim's family, to even attend memorial services, demonstrates a profound lack of empathy combined with an almost sociopathic need for control and manipulation." The defense attempted to challenge the DNA evidence, bringing in their own expert, to question the validity of testing genetic material that had been stored for over 3 decades. However, the prosecution's forensic team had been meticulous in their documentation, maintaining a clear chain of custody and using multiple independent laboratories to verify their results. The statistical probability that the DNA belonged to someone other than Timothy was calculated at 1 in 847 billion. Timothy himself remained largely silent throughout the proceedings, speaking only when directly addressed by the judge. His demeanor was described by court observers as eerily calm, showing none of the emotion or remorse that might be expected from someone facing life imprisonment. When given the opportunity to speak before sentencing, he declined, simply shaking his head when Judge Patricia Williams asked if he had anything to say to Sarah's family or the community. Margaret Coleman did choose to speak, however, delivering a victim impact statement that left few dry eyes in the courtroom. "For 35 years, I've wondered what happened to my daughter in her final moments," she said, looking directly at Timothy. "I wondered if she was scared, if she called for me, if she suffered. Now I know that she trusted you enough to go with you, and you betrayed that trust in the most horrible way possible. You didn't just steal Sarah's life, you stole my peace of mind, my faith in humanity, and my ability to trust. You stole my son's childhood because we were all consumed with grief. You stole countless nights of sleep from me, my husband, and everyone who loved Sarah." She paused, gathering strength before continuing. "But you didn't steal everything. You didn't steal my love for my daughter, my memories of her laughter, or my determination to see justice done. Sarah was kind, funny, creative, and full of life. She wanted to be a teacher, to help other children learn and grow. She never got that chance because of you, but her memory has inspired others to pursue education, to help children, to make the world a little bit better. In that way, Sarah's impact on this world will last far longer than your pathetic existence." Judge Williams sentenced Timothy to life in prison without the possibility of parole, the maximum sentence allowed under state law at the time of the crime. In her remarks, she noted the particularly heinous nature of the offense, committed against a child, as well as the defendant's complete lack of remorse or accountability. Mr. Patterson, you have shown yourself to be a danger to society, and particularly to children, she stated. Your actions have caused immeasurable pain to the Coleman family and to this entire community. While nothing can bring Sarah back or undo the suffering you have caused, this sentence ensures that you will never again have the opportunity to harm another child. The impact of Timothy's conviction rippled through Millbrook in ways both profound and subtle. The revelation that Sarah's killer had been hiding in plain sight for decades forced many residents to confront uncomfortable questions about their community and their ability to truly know their neighbors. Property values in Timothy's former neighborhood initially declined as families worried about the stigma of living near a killer's former home. The house itself remained empty for months before finally being purchased by a family from out of state who renovated it extensively. The Millbrook Community Center established the Sarah Coleman Memorial Scholarship Fund, which provides financial assistance to local students pursuing degrees in education. The fund has awarded over 200 scholarships in the years since Sarah's case was solved, helping young people achieve the dream of becoming teachers that Sarah never had the chance to fulfill. Each scholarship recipient receives not only financial support, but also a small framed photograph of Sarah, along with a brief biography that ensures her memory continues to inspire future generations. The case also led to significant changes in how the Millbrook Police Department handles missing persons investigations, particularly those involving children. Chief Rodriguez implemented new protocols requiring multiple detective teams to work simultaneously on different theories, preventing the tunnel vision that had hampered the original investigation. The department also invested in updated evidence storage facilities and established partnerships with multiple forensic laboratories to ensure that cold cases could be regularly reviewed using the latest scientific techniques. Dr. Patricia Hoffman, who had pioneered the genetic genealogy techniques that ultimately identified Timothy, used the case as a teaching tool in forensic science programs across the country. The Sarah Coleman case demonstrates both the incredible potential of modern forensic science and the importance of never giving up on seeking justice, she explained to a conference of law enforcement professionals. Technology gave us the tools to solve this case, but it was the dedication of investigators, the persistence of Sarah's family, and the careful preservation of evidence over 3 decades that made justice possible. The case garnered national attention, featured in several true crime documentaries and podcasts that examined both the original investigation and the breakthrough that led to Timothy's arrest. However, Margaret Coleman was selective about which media requests she accepted, choosing only those that she felt would honor Sarah's memory and potentially help other families facing similar tragedies. Sarah's story needs to be told, she explained in one interview, but not for entertainment. If her case can help solve other crimes, can help other families find answers, then something good can come from this terrible loss. Margaret passed away peacefully in her sleep in 2019, just 2 years after seeing Timothy convicted for her daughter's murder. Her obituary noted that she had lived to see justice for Sarah and had spent her final years advocating for other families of missing children. She was buried next to her daughter in Millbrook Cemetery. Their shared headstone, featuring an engraving of Sarah's favorite childhood drawing of a rainbow, arcing over a small house with smoke curling from the chimney. Michael Coleman, now in his 50s and a father of 3, has become an advocate for cold case investigations and victims' rights. He regularly speaks to law enforcement groups about the importance of maintaining hope and continuing to pursue leads even in cases that seem impossibly old. "My sister has been gone for over 35 years, he often tells audiences, but she's still teaching people. She's teaching us that every victim matters, that every case deserves attention, and that justice, even when delayed, still has meaning." The broader implications of Sarah's case extend far beyond Millbrook. The successful use of genetic genealogy to identify Timothy helped legitimize the technique in courts across the country, paving the way for hundreds of other cold cases to be solved using similar methods. The Golden State Killer case may have captured more headlines, but Sarah Coleman's case provided crucial legal precedents that helped establish the admissibility of genetic genealogy evidence in criminal prosecutions. Timothy Patterson remains incarcerated at the state maximum security prison, where he has maintained his silence about his crimes. He has never admitted guilt, never expressed remorse, and never provided any explanation for his actions. Prison records indicate that he spends most of his time alone, having been placed in protective custody after other inmates learned of his conviction for child murder. He has had few visitors over the years and has declined all interview requests from journalists and researchers. The question of whether Timothy committed other crimes continues to haunt investigators. His DNA has been run through databases nationwide, looking for matches to other unsolved cases, but no definitive links have been established. However, given his age and the calculated nature of Sarah's murder, many experts believe it's unlikely that this was his only offense. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit has consulted on the case, noting several factors that suggest Timothy may have been responsible for other disappearances or murders that remain unsolved. In the decades since Sarah's murder, advances in technology have revolutionized criminal investigations in ways that would have seemed like science fiction in 1988. DNA analysis that once took weeks can now be completed in hours. Genetic genealogy databases containing millions of profiles can be searched in minutes. Security cameras are ubiquitous, creating vast networks of surveillance that make it increasingly difficult for criminals to move undetected. Cell phone data provides detailed records of location and communication that can establish timelines and connections with unprecedented precision. Yet for all these technological advances, the human elements of criminal investigation remain unchanged. Success still requires dedicated detectives willing to follow leads wherever they lead, forensic specialists committed to finding answers in the smallest traces of evidence, and families with the strength to never stop seeking justice for their loved ones. Sarah Coleman's case exemplifies all of these elements working together across decades to achieve a resolution that once seemed impossible. The case also highlights the evolution of how society handles and discusses crimes against children. In 1988, such cases were often handled with less transparency, with authorities sometimes withholding information from both families and the public in ways that may have hindered investigations. Today's approach emphasizes communication, community involvement, and the use of media and technology to generate tips and maintain public awareness. The Amber Alert system, though it came too late to help Sarah, represents one of many systematic improvements in how law enforcement responds to child abductions. Sarah Coleman would have turned 48 years old this year. Those who knew her imagined the life she might have lived, the children she might have taught, the family she might have raised, the contributions she might have made to her community. Instead, her legacy lives on in the scholarship recipients who pursue careers in education, in the improvements to investigative techniques that may help solve future cases, and in the reminder that every victim deserves justice, no matter how long it takes to achieve. The resolution of Sarah's case brought closure to a community that had carried the weight of this unsolved mystery for over 3 decades. It validated the faith that Margaret Coleman had maintained through years of disappointment and false hope. It demonstrated the power of scientific advancement to reach back through time and reveal truths that seemed permanently hidden. Most importantly, it ensured that Sarah Coleman, the bright-eyed 10-year-old who dreamed of becoming a teacher, would never be forgotten, and that the man who stole her future would spend the rest of his life paying for that crime.